Honestly, this is what we call the typical example of from frying pan to fire. This is a typical example of what we call from grace to grass. Because let it make sense to me that at this point in time where a lot of people are already stressed, a lot of people are already exhausted, a lot of people are looking for an escape route. The only thing that this man can think is this thing you're about to watch. At this point in time, I think this awakening is a sweet one. Because if you have literally not been respecting Black Americans, you will this time around. This has literally, gradually, be going to another level. I want you guys to watch this video. Watch this video and let me understand why an adult, a full grown man, a ruler, a leader, will do all of this. You know, probably some of you might be like, oh, that's just the best. Let me know in the comment section if you think that's the best. But this is an important message as well. Credit belongs to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in our today's episode. And if you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Subscribe, like, comment, and share. And I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, dropping commentaries. I do not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. For disclaimers, this is just for educational purposes. Let's go watch, and I'll be back with commentaries.
I don't even care. Until 51% of Americans are truly outraged, there will be no change. And Donald Trump at this point can do whatever the heck he want to do. Each and every day we're waking up to more and more nonsense. And honestly, I just don't have the mental capacity to keep caring. And the majority race in this country doesn't care about what's going on because they actually agree with it. So what would be the point of minorities' outrage when the majority population here doesn't care? I don't even have any, I don't even have any words for this. Like this, the country burning, bro. The country's literally on fire right now. It's burning, bro. And it's only going to get worse.
Insurrection Act is on the table for Minnesota. On top of that, last night, Republicans decided to go ahead and sidestep with Wigs R Us. So if he decides to go ahead and attack Venezuela with military force, he can, y'all. He sure fucking can. France has decided to send their people over to Greenland for the training exercise right along with Germany, Norway, and Sweden. Because Tupe Fiasco's been popping his shit about owning Greenland and making it the 51st state of the United States. He also sent I Love a Sofa JD Vance ass and Marco I Could Never Be Deported over to Denmark to have a conversation with their delegation, which did not go too well because France is now moving their asses in. The founder of the Proud Boys is listed as one of the ICE agents. We were wondering where the fuck they went. They're there now. Thank you to whoever leaked that database. Yeah, and those ICE agents that unalive Renee Good, they left their trucks on the side of the road. Those got broken into in a list of all the ICE agents in Minnesota at this time. And where they're staying in Minneapolis has been revealed. Do what you may with that information. Oh, and about 2 days ago, ICE picked up a black woman. They rammed her off the side of the road. 10 million piled up on her. She said, I could show my ID. They didn't really give a shit. They threw her in the back of a car and they left her car on the side of the road. And y'all wonder why I can't stand none of y'all bitches that fucked up in the election.
Breaking news right now, Donald Trump woke up this morning and is now threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act for the state of Minnesota. In a new Truth Social post made to his account just minutes ago, the president of the United States says that if politicians cannot get what is happening on the ground under control in Minnesota, then he will invoke the Insurrection Act. The only problem for this narrative is that what's happening on the ground in Minnesota has been inflamed as a result of federal agents, ICE agents, being on the ground. If the ICE agents weren't on the ground, you wouldn't have demonstrations in Minnesota right now. But what would happen if the Insurrection Act were to be invoked? Because this is his clearest threat to date. The Insurrection Act allows the president to essentially deploy the United States military, the National Guard, onto United States soil, and also allows them to take one step further and conduct law enforcement activities. So, for example, unlike in Washington, D.C., where you have the Guard deployed, in Minnesota, if he were to invoke the Insurrection Act, Guard members would be able to conduct arrests, traffic stops, etc. Essentially do whatever law enforcement does. Now, will this hold up in court? It's anyone's guess. But the Supreme Court did leave the door open to at least it happening. So we'll see what happens. Spread the word. Follow for more.
The White House is threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act to send soldiers to occupy Minneapolis. Here's what the Insurrection Act actually does. So what is the Insurrection Act? It's an old law that allows the president to deploy active duty military troops inside the United States. So its purpose is to suppress rebellions and uprising, and its vague wording makes it easy to misuse. Normally, the Post-Comatosis Act prevents the U.S. military from acting as a domestic police force, but the Insurrection Act overrides that rule. So if invoked, the president can send soldiers into American cities to perform law enforcement duties, from putting down an insurrection to enforcing court orders. Now, this gives one person the power to decide what constitutes a crisis, and it can be used indefinitely. The Insurrection Act has been used roughly 30 times in U.S. history. Initially, it suppressed armed rebellions. Later, it was used to break labor strikes, dismantle the Klan, and to enforce desegregation during the Civil Rights Movement. So last time in recent memory that it was used during the 1992 LA uprisings, when people rebelled after the cops that brutalized Rodney King were able to walk free. And no president has ever sent troops against a state's wishes since 1965. Now, this law is a powerful tool that is used to try and crush righteous rebellions, moments when oppressed people rise up and say enough is enough. And the threat to use it is now meant to frighten people in Minneapolis fighting for justice into silence. But Minneapolis will not be scared into submission. This is the birthplace of the George Floyd Rebellion, and the people will continue to take the streets to demand justice for Renee Good, because this fight is just too important to stop. And if the guy in the White House truly wants the protest to end, he doesn't need to send soldiers to occupy Minneapolis. This could all end tomorrow if the officer that killed Renee Good is indicted and convicted for her murder, and ICE is taken out of our communities for good.
Morning on Truth Social, Donald Trump essentially confirmed the reason why everything is happening in Minnesota right now. Take a look. He said if the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law, meaning himself, and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in our once great state. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Calling elected officials corrupt and saying that anybody who is protesting what you're doing peacefully is an insurrectionist sets up a clear us versus them narrative, where any dissent becomes criminal. When federal agents go door to door in a state that's already on edge, confrontation isn't a risk, it's the entire point. Escalation creates visuals, resistance creates a lot of headlines, and those headlines are being used by Trump to consolidate even more power by invoking the Insurrection Act. Here's the playbook: discredit local leadership, override state authority, and normalize federal enforcement against civilians, then declare that only
it would go down. Not only do we have Trump threatening the Insurrection Act in Minnesota, because he posted this morning, they don't get a handle on it, they will institute the Insurrection Act there. Again, I said he would try and invoke it locally in local cities or states first before nationwide. And then he goes and talks to Reuters. He said, we shouldn't even have midterms. It's a deep psychological thing. The president wins the elections and then loses the midterms. Why do we even have them? And he joked about canceling the midterms. What was it, last week? Yeah, no more than 2 weeks ago. I think it was last week, though. This is serious. Now, Republicans are saying Greenland, if they invade Greenland, that's the impeachment line. I think that impeachment line needs to be brought forward a little bit to invoking the Insurrection Act on states and canceling the midterm elections. That is not legal. That is not part of the Constitution. That is not how our founding fathers designed this country to work, to have one man, the President of the United States, take all of the power. That impeachment line
has officially, on Truth Social, threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act. This would mean that the U.S. military, including the National Guard, would be sent to Minnesota to attack U.S. citizens, and they will be armed even more than ICE is already. So while Tim Walz is sitting on his hands, not calling up the National Guard to protect us, the president is going to use the National Guard to attack us. The United States is falling fast. The president is in violation of our Constitution and our laws on a daily basis, and no one is holding him accountable. He has control over the House of Representatives, the Senate, the FBI, the Department of Justice, and the Supreme Court of the United States. So while our elected officials tell us not to provoke the president and to stay within the law, he is the one who is breaking the law. The American people have done nothing to warrant this kind of attack. Under the First Amendment, we have the right to protest, to yell, to scream, to be in the streets. This has been the plan all along. And they're telling us to just roll over and be still.
So I just had an opportunity to interview Chris Meager, who's a former assistant to the Secretary of Defense. He also worked with Pete Buttigieg, worked with Joe Biden, and we talked the Insurrection Act. If you haven't heard already, Trump once again threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minnesota because of the violence that his troops, the Gestapo, is causing. So when we talk about the Insurrection Act, something to remember is that it is used to quell rebellion or when law enforcement can't handle a situation. Think about a judge, because if he invokes the Insurrection Act, it'll immediately go to judges, right? Think about a judge looking at that and going, your organization, these poorly trained ICE agents who have now executed an American citizen on U.S. soil, you're the ones who are actually breaking the law. And there have been countless incidents of that. So a federal judge coming to that situation and going, you're trying to tell me that you are invoking the Insurrection Act to go help law enforcement when your organization, your people, your Gestapo are the ones that are breaking the law. It doesn't work like that. And so it was a really good conversation with Chris. We talked about that. We also talked about Greenland and the consequences of that, of attacking a NATO country and basically blowing up our partnership with NATO, and how much weaker that would be when we face threats like Russia, when we face threats like China. It would obliterate our strength. We're the most powerful military, most powerful country in the world right now, and it would obliterate that because we would lose all of those allies and all of that strategic projection and the ability to help around the world. Okay, so I hope you check that out. That's dropped on YouTube as well as Substack. And yeah, let me know what you think of it. Okay, thank you.
This with the utmost disrespect possible. Don't any of you all tag me in or send me another damn video talking about this administration and the Insurrection Act. Again, the threat of martial law or the Insurrection Act did not stop me from attending one protest last year, and it won't stop me from attending one protest this year, because it amazes me. How do people think liberation is going to come about if not in the very face of the threat of violence from the system that we're talking about liberating ourselves from? Because sometimes you all sound not just stupid, but like straight cowards. Before any of you all bring your green eggs and ham reading asses into my comment section talking about it's a either or situation, like everything is binary in the fight for our liberation, if you don't have a strategy, or if you can't follow a strategy that doesn't involve you becoming a human shield, then maybe you need to stay your ass at home and out of the conversation. You all just need to admit you have no clue what liberation looks like or what it takes. This man gave an interview in Rutgers when he said the following concerning midterms. It's some deep psychological thing, but when you win the presidency, you don't win the midterms. When you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election. Are you all okay? Or is it industrial strength crack delusions you're smoking? What kills me is some of you all are the same weak ass individuals out here saying, Malcolm said by any means necessary. Fred Hampton said you can kill a revolutionary, but you can't kill a revolution. And I am a revolutionary. And What am I talking about? You all haven't read any of these books. You don't know who Fred Hampton, El Haj Malik Shabazz, or Huey Newton is, because you all are always out here taking your cues from the handbook that Master gave you to fight a revolution with. And that's where you all are. And that's why I said what I said. Now, if you want to fight somebody, I'm sure you'll want to fight me more than you want to fight the system that is oppressing people who look like us or marginalized communities, because we're easier targets. I said what I said. Don't send me any more of your damn videos. I don't care.
Trump woke up this morning, went on his Timu Twitter, and threatened to institute the Insurrection Act. This is what he said. If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in the once great state. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I mean, this is what he wanted all along. While this is not martial law, there is a distinct difference between martial law and the Insurrection Act. The Insurrection Act basically allows the military to come in and assist with law enforcement activities against the civilians, while the Insurrection Act is when the military comes in martial law is when the military comes in and replaces the government. It's not necessarily a precursor, but, you know, I can see this is a slippery slope, since all, you know, the first three, you know, the first sentence was if the corrupt politician. So that's really what he wants to do. He wants, you know, I think, and this is my opinion and my opinion only, I think that he wants, you know, this to slip into the Insurrection Act and to get so bad that he eventually has to turn on martial law, where the military would take over control of the entire city or state. That's where this is headed. Let me know what you guys think about this. Comment.
Good morning. I don't know that it's a good morning. I just woke up clearly, and about an hour ago, the President of the United States sent this out on Truth Social. If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in that once great state. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now let's be crystal clear. The Insurrection Act and martial law are two separate things, and you have to get to martial law in order to suspend elections, at least according to law, which we know they are not fond of following. Under the Insurrection Act, the president deploys the military into a state, a city, an area, and they are there to support state and local law enforcement. They are supposed to be there to enforce existing civilian laws. You can still peacefully assemble, which means protest. You can still speak your mind. Your civil liberties are intact. However, at a given point, if this continues to escalate, or at least escalate in the eyes of the president, he can then move to martial law. Martial law is much different. Our civil liberties are suspended. You cannot speak freely. I would imagine in this day and age, they would suspend access or limit access to social media. You cannot protest, and they can arrest you and not give you a reason why. To get to martial law, you have to have the Insurrection Act go poorly, at least the way I see it in terms of political strategy. And so this is what is going to happen in each and every state that follows. They will do anything to win or cheat or cancel 2026 midterms, which, by the way, cannot be canceled in the event of overseas war. It would have to be martial law was enacted. Plan 1 was to go in and redistrict a bunch of red states to try and gain more seats in the House of Representatives and maintain control. That didn't work because the Dems were like, oh, well, we'll play that game too. In fact, Governor Newsom of California went so far as to include it on the ballot in California, and Californians themselves said, yeah, go ahead, redistrict. Plan B was to incite violence so that they could enact martial law. And that didn't work either, because we see that happening in Minnesota. And yes, ICE is being violent. And yes, Americans are protesting and doing so and getting in their faces and yelling and screaming, all of which is within their First Amendment rights. But people are smart. They're not instigating violence with these goons, and so that's not working. Donald Trump realizes his time is limited because November 2026 is just 11 months away. So this is what he's going to do. He's going to invoke the Insurrection Act, and then he'll move on to another state. Those soldiers will remain deployed there, and he'll do the same thing he just did in Minnesota to your state or mine or any of the other states, probably blue states. And then this will be the pattern. Go in, wreak havoc, turn the place into a war zone, send the military in, then send ICE to the next state to get prepared for the takeover there. Unfortunately, it's smart. It's vile and evil, but it is smart. At this point, you're probably thinking, yeah, but didn't you just say it has to be martial law to cancel our elections? And I say, yeah, because the Insurrection Act happens, civilians are allowed to be out and about and protesting and doing all the things, and that will further escalate from there. Then they can call martial law.
Woke up this morning. I'm reporting live from the United States of Embarrassment. Now, the Dollar Tree dictator woke up this morning and posted to his Truth Social this, that he is calling for an Insurrection Act for Minnesota. Now, I don't know if y'all have seen the clips from Minnesota, but they're not playing over there. Meaning that they are being peaceful. They are talking a whole lot of shit. But the violence is coming from the ICE agents. So I'm just very confused. And this is what they want. They want to create a sense of war in the United States of embarrassment. Okay. I don't see Minnesota letting that happen though. And yeah, I totally forgot to finish this video, but stay tuned. We'll take a look and see what happens, and I'm going to disassociate and celebrate my birthday and my friend's birthday. Still will be locked in with you guys. Hopefully Iran, hey, we heard you. It's time.
Woke up this morning
Very sad day for America.
and is threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act against the state of Minnesota if, as he puts it, Minnesota lawmakers do not get things together. Now, it's important to note that the reason why things are the way they are is not because of us. We are not causing chaos. ICE agents who have been surged into the state are the reason and the purpose for the chaos. They're pulling people out of cars. They're stalking people. They're chasing people down. They're pulling up at schools at dismissal. They have shot people. They are injuring people. They're detaining citizens. Everything that is happening is because of them. Now, I know the invoking of the Insurrection Act has been a boogeyman that's been sitting out there for a long time. So I think it's important for us to take a second and recognize what it is and is not. What the Insurrection Act would give is the president the ability to bring in the National Guard and the military to perform law enforcement duties. Right now, the military cannot do law enforcement, but under the Insurrection Act, they could. What the Insurrection Act is not is martial law. And I know sometimes those are talked about in the same way, but they are not mutually inclusive. It gives the military the ability to do law enforcement, but it does not make the military the law. There's a divide here in the state of Minnesota right now around whether or not Governor Walz is doing enough. He addressed the state last night, and he gave us all the clarion call to be mindful, to record and report the things that we are seeing, and to be peaceful in the streets because we cannot give Donald Trump what he wants, which is enough chaos for him to say, oh, that's enough. I'm bringing in the National Guard and I'm bringing in the military. I believe that Governor Walz has been holding on to the deployment of the National Guard as a last resort because he did not want to signal to the administration that he was somehow inciting some sort of civil war. It should be noted, however, that the Trump administration has repeatedly lost in court when trying to nationalize the National Guard in different states. And so trying to invoke the Insurrection Act would probably yield the same result in court because they have been consistently losing. It's also important to note that the Insurrection Act does not give the Trump administration the ability to cancel elections. I know people have talked about he just wants to invoke the Insurrection Act and have martial law and cancel elections, and those things do not happen according to the Insurrection Act. And if that was what he was trying to do, January would be an early time to pull that trigger. Now, even with my knowledge of what the Insurrection Act is and isn't, I'm scared. I'm scared for myself, for my family, for my children.
about what this all means in the day-to-day life as I'm just trying to exist here in the state. So if you're also afraid, you're not by yourself. I keep saying here in the state of Minnesota, we're not doing okay, but we gonna be all right. In part because as all these things are happening around us, we're strong, we're resilient, we're gonna continue to report and record, we're gonna continue to stay peaceful in the streets, and ultimately, we will win this. I just have to believe that we will. Until then, I'll be right here, and thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Anyways, welcome back, guys. And you guys have literally seen what this man has said. Yes, that is what he said, and that is what he will do. That is why when a lot of people are trying to tell this man that this man is actually a dictator, some people will still come out here defend him and be like, oh, he's not a dictator. He's actually doing what he's supposed to do. In fact, he's one of the best presidents, east, west, north, and south. I just have a simple research here. Let me know why American is actually experiencing these difficulties now. American currently difficulties aren't caused by a single problem. They came from several long-term pressure hitting at the same time, which makes the situation feel especially intense. Here are the main reasons. Deep political division. The US is more politically paralyzed than at any point in decades. Republicans and Democrats increasingly see each other as threats, not opponents. The lead to government shutdown, stores laws, and constant conflict. Trust in institution, Congress, court, media has dropped drastically. It is harder for the country to make decisions or respond quickly to crisis. Let's talk about the economic strains on ordinary people. Even when official data says the economy is growing, many Americans feel very worst. High cost of living, housing, healthcare, education, food, wages growth hasn't kept up with the price of many workers. Large wealth gap between the rich and everyone else. Frustration, anger, loss of faith in American dreams. The third one, which is declining global dominance. For decades after World War II, Americans were the unquestioned global leaders. That is changing. China is rising economically and technologically. Russia challenges US influence military. Other regions are becoming more independent of US leader. But the result, America must spend more resources defining its position. Why citizens ask why problem at home mail unsolved. We have a cultural and identity conflict where rapid social changes has created tension, debate over race, immigration, gender, religion, and national identity, older traditional clashes and viewers' values. Social media amplify outrage and misinformation. Results: we have Americans to agree to the country is and should be. The fifth one, which is extend and empire fatigue. The US has been heavily involved in global conflict for decades. Long war, Iraq, Afghanistan with unclear benefits. Massive military spending while infrastructures at home. Results: many Americans feel exhausted and skeptical about foreign involvement. Institution aging. Many American systems were designed decades ago: electronic system, healthcare system, educational system, infrastructure. This system now struggles to function in a fast, digital, globalized world. The big problem, the picture is American isn't collapsing, but it is going through a painful adjustment from unchallenged superpower, one power among several, to high trusting society, low trust, highly divided society, industrial economic, digital, unequal economic. History should that period like that often turbulent. You see, the truth is Americans have literally been going through a lot, but this man has literally not been able to see anything wrong with it. And at the end of the day, instead of looking out for solution, instead of looking out for what will definitely help us, What he's literally doing is to go ahead, keep bringing one. I love for the fact that a lot of black people said they don't really care. He should go ahead and do whatsoever that he needs to do. They don't care. And as at this point, I just pray for grace. I pray for mercy. I pray for wisdom to black folks. Honestly, that's what I prayed for. Because with the level it's going right now, I don't just know. Just let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section. Credit belongs to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in our today's episode. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Please do subscribe, like this video, drop in your comments. And lastly, do not forget to share for every other person to get this good news. And yes, without further ado, I do not policy in my videos. I am going to, and I'll see you guys in the educational